What's up, Gator Nation? Zach Abolverdi and Nick Torre here, and we're back as we turn gears towards spring football. 1 week away from the start of spring practices. Nick and I are going to run through our biggest questions entering spring camp, some top players to watch, and some other storylines as well. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center in Gainesville, Florida. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide more effective and efficient care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And a week from this Thursday, Nick and I will be out there on the practice field watching this team get after it. 27 new scholarship players added to the roster from the 2024 class. Obviously, some departures as well from NFL draft, portal. So a lot of questions about this team heading into spring ball. Nick, what are some of the biggest ones that you have?
I mean, obviously, like I said, Zach, what number is DJ Lagway wearing? How is Jeremy Crawshaw doing? Just, as a person, as a man. I think there are some interesting as a punter. Yeah, I mean, obviously great. I think there's a bunch of different things to look at from a starting job, like quarterbacks locked up, running backs locked up. I think tackles are kind of locked up. Who starts at guard? Center's locked up with Jake Slaughter. You lost both starting guards, and you and I have gone back and forth about the offensive line. I don't think they really improved the offensive line much. Which then, how do you run behind that offensive line? How do you start to build and mesh as an offensive line in the spring and figure out those answers? I think Najee Harris is one, but then who's the other one at guard?
Especially if you're young there.
Yeah. Speaking of young playmakers, Arliss Boardingham, Hayden Hansen, Tony Livingston, and then you lose Ricky Pearsall. You've got Eugene Wilson, and who? I like Andy Jean, I think. I like Aiden Mizell, I think. I put Marcus Burke on my now or never list.
Yeah.
But you've got a massive, massive comet-sized crater hole to fill in the form of Ricky Pearsall, who will be in Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine this week.
And I think that, as much as I don't expect this guy to come close to Ricky's production or ability, I do think that Shamir DK is going to become Mertz's go-to target with Eugene Wilson. I don't think, again, that he's going to be as dynamic or as productive, but I do think that their history there, like you said, Nick, the just kind of openness there at the receiver spot, I think that Eugene Wilson is the only guaranteed starter. There's going to be some chemistry and I think some history there that Mertz leans on, but they're going to need one of those young guys like it was Eugene Wilson in 2023. They're going to need another one, whether it's one of the redshirt freshmen in Mizell or Jean, or one of the true freshmen in
got some speed, that's for sure.
Yeah, Hawkins and Abrams. Like one of those guys or two of those guys need to push, Marcus Burke, Jaquavion Fraziers for playing time and get on the field, make an impact. The Gators got speed to burn, so that's something that I think are which one of those guys of those four that I just mentioned is ready to take that next step and provide that weapon playmaker that Nick's just mentioned that they need one to emerge.
And that's really what I mean. That's really what I mean, Zach, is just when I say hey, they don't have playmakers, I'm just saying they don't have anyone proven. I'm not saying, hey, I think Andy Jean and Aiden Mizell are bad players. We just haven't seen them. Very, very limited. You got some legit track speed in Tank, but it's just unproven.
Yeah. And then Defensively, Nick, what are some of your biggest questions that you see?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the clearly Florida fan favorite Princely Umumielen. How do you replace him? You have a lot of guys. I like Justice Boone. I think Florida's defensive line. I don't know that there's any first team All SEC guy on it, but I think you're really, really deep between Boone and Sapp and Jackson and Dez and Banks and Slackman and Gums and you've got a lot of guys. It looks like Jack Pyburn is like a cyborg the way how quickly he's coming back. But someone who won't be ready for spring, obviously. But
Yeah.
you've got a lot of those guys. The secondary is going to be really, really young. Outside of Jason Marshall and Asa Turner, everyone's a sophomore, freshman, redshirt freshman, super young. So I think getting Asa Turner in there to kind of sit next to Jordan Castell, who, while young on paper, played more snaps than anyone last year on defense. And then to me, listen, Shamar's locked down a starting spot. If Shamar James is healthy, he will be starting at linebacker. Who's next to him? Is it Pup Howard? Is it Miles Graham? Who steps into that role? I'm really, really interested to see Pup and Miles and how they look. So there's a bunch of questions for me. I think the defensive line has a great depth, great numbers. Who's next to Shamar? And how do the young guys look in the secondary? Because the secondary is very, very young.
Yeah, I'm with you, Nick. I think the biggest question mark for me is offensive line, which we've gotten into. How's that going to shake out at guard? Who's going to start where at the left and right tackle spots? That's all going to be fascinating. I think that like you said, probably the biggest question mark on defense is who replaces Princely Umumielen. I think it's Cersei season. I think it is Cersei SZN, Nick. I think that dude coming off a freshman all SEC season. I know that Jack Pyburn is the other guy at that Jack outside linebacker spot.
Yeah. But
tore his ACL in November, and this is Cersei's time to shine. He's going to get all the first team reps in spring. The way that Pyburn is recovering, I anticipate him obviously being ready for the season, but I think Cersei getting the full off season, getting all the first team reps, and I just think he's got the highest ceiling there. I think that he's going to be the one that kind of emerges at that spot, or at least he's the one that I anticipate. You got George Gums there, Quincy Ivory, Jamarcus Weston. Shout out to the former wide receiver, safety, linebacker, and now he's on his fourth spot. Because of that, though, I just think that Cersei, it's there. The job is there for the taking for him. And then in the secondary, you're right, Nick. They are young, but they did add Bridges and DJ Douglas. Both those guys are redshirt seniors, so which they needed. I'm fascinated about what's going to happen with those two.
Where do they play is where I'm fascinated with, because before Asa shows up, I think, okay, Triquez will play safety, Douglas will play nickel, or vice versa, but both guys probably starting. Now, I look at Asa Turner, his production, his seniority, and I'm like, that's your guy. That's Jordan Castell. In my mind, we are close to sharpieing starting safeties. And now you've got two other guys who have some experience and guys who can tackle.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure when Will Harris was on that flight back to Cali to pick up his stuff, watching stuff on an iPad going, whoa, time to send some offers.
And like that star spot, man.
Yeah.
You lost Jaden Hill. Who is going to emerge there? Like I think right now going into we've reported Gators Online that the staff has not made up its mind where DJ Douglas is going to play.
Mm-hmm.
He can play star or safety. They recruited Bridges to play safety. He was a cornerback at Oregon. I think played some nickel, but was mostly cornerback. But he's got obviously the versatility that he could play star. But again, he was recruited at safety. So to your point, Nick, when he got signed from Oregon, I thought, okay, Castell and Bridges are your starting safeties. But I agree with you. Adding Turner to that mix makes him one of the starters. I think you get a healthy rotation probably is what's going to happen with Turner, Castell, Bridges, and don't forget Bryce Thornton as well, who kind of took over as a starter for Miguel Mitchell, which is part of the reason why he's gone. But at that star spot, you're going to have, I anticipate DJ Douglas. You're also going to have Sharif Denson.
Yeah.
But does one of the corners maybe move or play some star just to try and get your best guys on the field? Like, we know Jason Marshall is going to start at one of the corner spots. You lost Jalen Kimber to Penn State, and I think everybody, views Devin Moore as just stepping right in. I think he would have started over Kimber last season if he wouldn't have been hurt so much. But you also got a ton of talented freshman corners. Grimsley, you got Dejon Johnson, Mustard. You got Jakeem Jackson. So do you maybe try one of those guys at nickel just to create some depth or competition? I would imagine that they're going to experiment and do a lot of cross training, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lack of bodies or a lack of talent. I think adding the experience they did is important, especially because I'm looking at a guy like Aaron Gates too, who got his first playing time later on in the year after dealing with knee injuries seemingly forever. And if it seemed like a long time for us, you can only imagine how long it seemed for him having to actually go through it. So another guy I'm excited to see. I think he has the potential to be a really good player. What does he look like fully healthy as well? So,
and he made a position change too this year, going from cornerback to safety. And again, he's another guy. From what I understand, I think the staff likes him at safety, but if the need persists at star, he's a corner now moving to safety, that he can fit in that role. Does he get a shot there?
That group does a ton of cross training. So, we said it we let fans know last year. It was like, listen, despite Corey Raymond being named the secondary coach, Austin Armstrong is coaching the safeties, and the nickels work with the safeties. They practice together when they do go off into individual drills.
They're classified as safeties on the roster too.
Yeah. So that's interesting to me. There's a lot of good questions. I think Florida's team, and I've done a couple shows this week and podcasts where people want to talk about how tough the schedule is. I think Florida's team, like on paper, might be even deeper in some spots, specifically on the defensive line. I think the linebacker room is much better than it was last year when you add Pup and Miles and Aaron Childs. When he shows up, he won't be here in the spring, but when he shows up, he's a grown man pretending to be a high school athlete. So
I think Justice Boone being back is huge too.
Yeah, like he is an emotional leader along with being a leader on the field in the weight room. But you can only do so much of that when you're not in it. Like, it's tough and you saw him, they brought him on some road trips even. And you see him on the sideline, he's trying to get into it, but it's different when you're in sweatpants and on crutches and you got sunglasses on versus running off the field, with blood dripping down your arm and grass stains on your clothes. It's a little bit different. So having him back,
you just knocked out Will Levis.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but I think getting him back will be huge. I think Florida is, in my opinion, their biggest losses were Jaden Hill, Princely Mumielen, and obviously Trevor Etienne. And I think you're equipped at all three of those positions. Running back, I think, and we said this, I thought the perception of Trevor Etienne leaving, specifically where he went, was worse than what you lose in production. Now, I think he's probably still would have been Florida's best running back, but I think you're fine with Jaden Baugh. I'm blanking on the other freshman. Jaden Baugh, Trayon Webb, Caden Daniels, and Montreal Johnson. I think that's a stable of four that you're fine with. there's like 9 guys that can play edge and rush the passer. And then we mentioned all of the guys, in the secondary.
Yeah.
Sorry, Harrison. It's a Vail snowstorm knocked out our streaming service, but we're back, buddy.
We're back. And there is 2 other questions specifically on special teams. And that might not be going where you guys think. No, Nick, we're not talking about the punters.
Locked up.
We are talking about the punting game, though. The Gators will have to replace not only their punt returner, Ricky Pearsall, but their top kick returner, Trevor Etienne. So I don't know how much we'll get to see in practice. We'll find out who's working where as camp plays out. And then obviously in the spring game, we'll get to see who they put back there. But I would imagine Jason Marshall, he's done it before, could take over as the punt returner. But it'll be interesting to see who reps there as well as returning kicks.
Yeah, I mean, Eugene Wilson's a guy
back there.
Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mizell, can Andy Jean do it?
Hawkins.
The
fastest player on the team.
Can Tank do it? Can Hawk? Like, you've got a bunch of options. Not something I'd be worried about, but something definitely to watch. I think that's a super interesting point you bring up. Like, there are some options, and there's some real speed. Shout out to Harrison for the speed and space. They definitely, added to that this offseason.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they get those guys involved, whether that's on special teams. Would love to obviously see them take off on some go routes. But we're gonna circle back. Those are some of the biggest questions that we have. I want to get more specifically into players to watch. Whether these are breakouts that Nick and I expect, whether these are newcomers, be them transfers or high school early enrollees. Nick, who are some of your top players that, like, you already mentioned, obviously, the number anticipation. But just as we get out there on that first day, like, who can you not wait to see besides Jeremy Crawshaw?
Yeah. LJ McCray. LJ McCray and Miles Graham. Those are we just spent like 10 minutes talking about guys, edge rushers, defensive line, and forgot to mention a 5-star LJ McCray. DJ Lagway is the one we talk about, and rightfully so. But LJ McCray and Miles Graham are the 2 freshmen I think will play the most, have the best opportunity to play. I think Miles Graham could win a starting job at some point. That's how good I think he is. And I think LJ McCray, we saw how much Kelby Collins and how much TJ Searcy were able to play as freshmen. LJ McCray is better and more advanced than they were at this point of their careers. So those are the 2 guys that I can't wait to see. I've seen LJ McCray in person a couple times. He is massive, just a gigantic human, and really fast. And I'll be interested to see where they play him. I think they will play him in several places. But watching his film and what he does off the edge, like, that's where I would like to see him. I don't know if that's where he'll be, but that's where I would like to see him.
I'm with you. And look, I fall. I don't think that there is a Florida fan. I don't think that there's a Florida media member. I don't think that there is a person in that program that can't wait to see DJ on day one. I mean, it just, like, even though Graham Mertz is the starter and it's a blessing for Florida that they return, their redshirt senior quarterback who just is coming off of a career high season, boy, all eyes are going to be on DJ. And that just comes with the territory of.
What if, like, one of Graham Mertz's professors schedules an exam for March 7th? And Graham can't make the first practice.
just cause a bunch of controversy out the gate.
Yeah. Listen, DJ Lagway, we've talked about it so much on the show. We've had him on the show.
This is like Tebow's first practice out there. It's the closest thing to it.
100%. DJ Lagway is a franchise player, a guy that you can win a championship with, SEC and or otherwise. But this is still Graham Mertz's team, and
Yep.
I can't say enough about Graham Mertz. You've talked to Graham about it. I've talked to Graham about it. He's talked to the media at large about it. Graham Mertz is 100% in on being that mentor to DJ. Like, yeah, listen, DJ didn't sign up and isn't going to put his helmet on thinking, man, it's going to be so cool to sit the bench this year. Like, DJ would love to win the starting job. I don't think he's going to. I think this is Graham Mertz's team. But DJ is going to push him, and Graham Mertz is ready for that, but also ready to let DJ see, hey, this is what it takes just from a getting your schoolwork done so that you have time to then do extra film work, because that's what it takes to be successful as a quarterback at Florida. You can't just show up for practice and meetings and then go home and do whatever you want to do. So having somebody like Graham, who's going into his 6th year, I think, and somebody that has that experience, who isn't worried about losing his job and excited about being a mentor, I think is going to be huge for DJ Lagway, huge for the locker room, and huge for the future of the Gators, which Graham Mertz doesn't have to do that. Like, he's signed up for one more year. Like, that's all he has left. And it's easy to get a big ego and be like, man, screw this kid. All the fans, that's all they want to do is talk about him. This is what I did last year, and I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not going to help him, because if I do help him and he takes my job, that might hurt my future. And if I do help him, he's just going to help the team next year, and it's not my team. So that's a selfish attitude, and couldn't be farther from the attitude that Graham has towards DJ in this year.
No doubt. And we've gotten into the offensive line. I think that there are several players that I'm looking forward to watching, but maybe the one the most is Roderick Kearney, because I'm very interested to see how much he reps at guard and where he's at in his progression, because if he can continue to rep as and serve as the backup center while also stepping in as the starting guard, where he was ranked as one of the best recruits in the country, I think that would be the best case scenario for Florida, because I think that
Najee Harris, Najee, Slaughter, Kearney.
And you got 2 guards now that are young, that are part of that class, that you can now play with for years to come. And instead of like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and figure out which one of your tackles can play guard. And I think that they'll get one of them to do it if they have to. But I'm just very, very interested to see Kearney's involvement at the guard position, how much he's cross-training, or if they simply stick him and keep him at center. I don't anticipate that.
I would use the spring to get him back to guard. Like he was a guard at IMG and then got to Florida, and they were like, hey, how about
just cross-train both?
How about you start with the ball in your hand? And Najee Harris was a center in high school, and they were like, over to guard, buddy. So they flip-flopped them, and Najee Harris was able to get in a bunch, and Rod knew that, hey, this is going to be a development process. But you found something in Jake Slaughter because of Kingsley's injury. You found something in Jake Slaughter.
Great point.
Who, if I was doing that, now or never list, I probably would have thrown Jake Slaughter on it before last year. And he had after a tough first game, which, listen, you're on the road, but after a tough first game was fantastic. So you found something in Slaughter, which you probably weren't banking on when you moved Rod Kearney from guard to center. But now you're probably going to have to replace your left tackle. Your right tackle in Crenshaw Dixon is only has 1 year of eligibility left. So I think the point you made, Zach, of, hey, we have Jake Slaughter for another year, Rod Kearney for another year or 2 years, 3 years. We have Najee Harris for 2-3 years. We're going to have to replace the outside. What if we get this nucleus ready for 2025 and get them these reps now? I think that's that, in my opinion. Now, listen, we could go out there and Rob Sale could laugh at us if he's listening to this and like, Rod's playing center, you guys are idiots. But I think that's a really interesting dynamic, especially when you look and you forecast, going into next year. If you can have your left guard, center, right guard coming back as starters for next year, I think that's huge. And Rod Kearney, I think I would put as one of the better options at any of the 3 interior offensive line spots.
Do you remember what Billy said about him too? I think he said that he had the best offensive line tape in the country in that year's class, in his opinion. So I think it'd be huge if Florida can get both him and Harris to, progress to the point that they're ready to start in their second year. That'd be fantastic. And then on the defensive side, a lot of players that I can point to is the top guys I want to watch. But I go back to the transfer class and the purpose of the portal, which is to improve your roster and get better at spots so that you can get better as a team. And I think everybody can agree that on the defensive line, the Gators need more. They need more pressure. They need more production. They need more impact. I think that you're set with Cam Jackson coming back as your nose tackle. But I think that there's going to be a lot of competition for that, what Florida calls it, that end spot, or maybe some would view as a defensive tackle. But I think that where Caleb Banks started last season, he's now going to be challenged, I would anticipate, by Joey Slackman. And this is the guy who was the number 2 defensive tackle in the portal, according to On3's industry rankings. So this is a guy that was the highlight of your transfer class, or one of them. And I think for you to get better as a unit and you to get better up front, he's got to be a big part of that, whether he starts or whether he's heavily involved in the rotation and making an impact on, specific downs and specific packages. I want to see if he is coming over from the Ivy League ready to step in and make that type of impact and make that type of transition, because it is going to be an adjustment coming over to the SEC, but he's also a guy that they're really excited about as a staff and team and think that he can help. So we'll find out.
Yeah. Again, that line is deep. I mean, shoot, I just spent 5 minutes gushing about LJ McCray, who we had completely forgotten when we did our first pass through the defensive line. So, I mean, I said it tonight, or I said it last year, that I thought the line was better and deeper. So again, I don't know that there's a first team all SEC guy, maybe a first team all freshman SEC guy. But I think the talent that you have with Collins and Slackman and Cam and Boone coming back and Searcy, McCray, it's a lot of names there, a lot of potential there.
No doubt. So, again, we are 1 week away from the start of spring ball. We've already started our depth chart projections, put the offense out on Thursday. You can read the defense on Friday. We'll have a lot more coverage coming your way to get you ready for the start of spring camp. So make sure you stay locked with Gators Online. And before we get out of here, I want to touch on UF Hoops and baseball and the latest happening on those 2 fronts. Obviously, the Gators, with a win Wednesday night over Missouri, reach 20 wins for the season. And that is significant, as I've reported and we've talked about. That 20-10 mark, 10 wins in league play, is kind of the numbers that the Gators had been shooting for, because since the tournament expanded to 20 teams, to 64 teams, the Gators have never had 20 wins and 10 in SEC and not made the tournament. So they already got there before we get to March, and still have 3 regular season games left, and they're already at 20 wins. And this is the first time that they've had a 20-win regular season since 2017 and 2018, and also marks the first time since 2016 that Florida reached 20 wins before the month of February closed. So kind of a big deal that Golden has kind of sparked this turnaround. The Gators have won 9 of their last 11 games, 7 straight at home. When they got that win over Missouri, Nick, the first time, that was their first SEC road win of the season. And since then, they've just been on a tear. Could have easily won the game that they lost at Texas A&M and at Alabama, and could be 11-0 or during that stretch. So also could have lost some of those games that they pulled out. Obviously, Kentucky was one that they got done. So right now they're in a really good spot heading into March. We'll see how they finish out the year and then how they do in the SEC tournament. But right now, current NCAA projections have them as a number 6 seed, potentially a number 5 seed if they can keep winning, Nick. But
shoot, this is a team, Zach. A month ago, we were talking weekly on the bubble, last 4 in, first 4 out. Yeah. So I think it's a testament to where they've gotten. Obviously that one weird loss on Wednesday night WWE SmackDown in Tuscaloosa. Alabama looks, really good. They're scoring 100 a game. But how do you think Florida finishes? 2 road games, and then that rematch with Alabama senior night, looking like that's Tuesday. So at South Carolina Saturday at noon. Be able to tune into baseball after that. So South Carolina, Alabama, Vanderbilt. How do you see Florida finishing here?
Man, I think they're going to find a way to go 2-1. I think it's certainly possible that they could go 3-0, but that's going to be a tough stretch at South Carolina and then come right back at Alabama. But look, the Gators are really, really good at home this season. 13-1, 7 straight in SEC play, and I think that getting Alabama in the O-Dome, that is a game that they can win. But I also think that South Carolina is they certainly have the potential to get a dub there as well. But that is going to be a harder matchup. It's on the road. That would be the one that I would anticipate as a loss. And then obviously going on the road at Vanderbilt, that's always a weird place to play. Vanderbilt got a win the other night, and they played pretty well against Florida, but I still anticipate that that's going to be a game that Florida should win. So, I think that they could finish the season 22-9, which would be pretty impressive. 21-10 at the worst. But that's why it was so critical to get to this 2010 threshold. And after you lost at Alabama in overtime, win these 2 games at home against Vanderbilt and Missouri that are at the bottom of the SEC. You just had to take care of business so that you could get through this threshold. And now you're playing with house money against South Carolina and against Alabama. And if you can win one of those games, you're improving your seeding. Now you're potentially a 5 seed. And you got a lot of confidence going into the tournament in Nashville. So they're in a good spot right now. Shout out to Golden and this team for making Florida basketball fun again. Because it's like
Florida basketball. Now. What do they say, Zach? Florida basketball.
Fantastic. Yeah, they're saying it again. And
Portal God Todd.
Portal God, the Todd father.
The Todd father.
What's the nicknames for Kevin O'Sullivan?
Sully. That's it.
That's it.
Sully. Yeah.
How did he feel about a 4-1 week for the Gators, and obviously really impressive performance from his pitching staff, or specifically Liam Peterson?
Yeah, Liam Peterson has been as good as advertised. And man, I didn't like doing it, but I just felt strongly about it when I said, he's the best freshman arm I've seen since Brady Singer, because I know what that kind of pressure that will put on him, or, saying or comparing him to Brady Singer. But he's just a stud. 18-year-old kid throwing the ball 95, throws 4 pitches. Hasn't given up a run yet. Really big test for him this week on the road at Miami. He pitched on the road at UNF. Totally different ball game in Coral Gables. That's a rabid fan base. They love baseball down there in South Florida. So it will be a different environment in Coral Gables than it was at UNF. But Florida's still figuring things out. This first month of the season is all about getting opportunities and finding out who you can trust with those, once the season really starts mattering come SEC play, which we're creeping up on. So the Gators fell on Tuesday. Credit the Florida fans. Obviously I saw on Twitter some meltdown going on, but we've created a really good baseball community on the message board on Gators Online. There was minimal midweek meltdown. So shout out. I tip my cap to the Gators Online message board. I was certainly getting it every which way on Tuesday about Florida being bad, cancel the season, fire Sully. But yeah, Florida baseball, huge series. This is kind of a measuring stick of where each program is early on in the year. So I'll be there. If you're in South Florida, if you're heading to the games, holler at me. Come and say hello. And I'm looking forward to a little Cuban coffee and a Mark Light shake, Zach. A little cafecito.
And some nice weather, hopefully.
Yeah,
better
it's
than
in
what
the
we got in
70s.
Gainesville
In the
today.
70s.
Let's go. Let's go. Well, exciting times right now with UF Athletics, and we are going to cover what should be an exciting weekend on our beats as the Gators head to Columbia, South Carolina for a top 25 matchup that I don't think anybody anticipated was going to be the case going into the season. But both Florida and South Carolina have exceeded expectations this year, now playing for seeding down the stretch. So we'll see how that game plays out. Then the Gators are at home Tuesday against Alabama for their rematch. Nick will be in Miami to see how the Gators fare against the Hurricanes. And then obviously when we join you guys next week, it will be after practice number 1 for the Florida Gators. We'll let you know how they look, what we saw, and make sure that you stay locked to Gators Online for all of our coverage. You can get in the door for just $1. Make sure you like and subscribe for all the videos we got coming from spring ball, and hopefully a number 5 seed wherever they send me for the tournament. You'll be able to watch it on the Gators Online channel. So until next time, for Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi. We'll see you guys later. Peace.